Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is a popular, hardworking, and multi-talented actor, comedian, impressionist, voice artist, and educator who's been entertaining us for 4 decades. You've seen him in many critically acclaimed movies, including Apollo 13, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Frost Nixon, EdTV, Magnolia, There Will Be Blood, and many others. He's appeared in dozens of TV shows, including Whose Line Is It Anyway?, Friends, 2.5 Men, Criminal Minds, Hot in Cleveland, Parks and Recreation, The Big Bang Theory, This Is Us, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and so many more. Most recently, his career is on fire. He's co-starring with Sean Penn and Julia Roberts in the miniseries entitled Gaslit, now airing on the Starz network. He'll be seen in the upcoming season of Hunters, starring Al Pacino and Carol Kane on Amazon Prime. And he'll have a recurring role in a brand new series from the creator of Schitt's Creek called The Big Door Prize, which will be airing on Apple TV. And if that weren't enough, his voice is featured on hundreds of best-selling video games. And if you watch TV, you'll recognize him playing Colonel Saunders on those popular KFC commercials. And he plays President George Washington crossing the Delaware Turnpike in that funny Geico commercial. On top of all that, he's got a brand new online acting course that I'll be asking him about. There is simply nothing that this man can't do. I'm delighted to welcome Jim Meskimen to our show. Jim, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for that very gracious and complimentary and highly inaccurate description of my career. Thank you.
I think it is accurate. I did my research.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you.
Jim, I want to start by paying tribute to your dear mom, Marion Ross, who I adore. She played everybody's favorite mother, Mrs. Cunningham, on Happy Days. I hope she knows how very beloved she is by many generations of TV audiences.
Well, I'm happy to say that my mother, who will be 94 next month, is very happy and well, and indeed very, very aware that she is a beloved person and just enjoys the fact that she has made that mark and left that legacy. And she's really having a wonderful third act, if you will.
I'm so happy to hear that. Your mom wrote a terrific book entitled My Days, Happy and Otherwise. And I'm told that we have you and your wife and your sister to thank for convincing your mom to write such a charming and delightful book. She shared so many wonderful stories about working with the greatest Hollywood stars of all time. She really had an amazing career, didn't she?
She really did. And we heard all the stories about, her working with Noel Coward and Cary Grant and so many others prior to her Happy Days years. And we were a little bit worried that those stories would get lost. And so we were able to put her together with a very good ghostwriter, David Laurel, with whom she shared the credit very graciously. And they captured those stories so that our family and anybody else who's interested could find out about her extraordinary career.
Well, please give her my love and the love of our viewers and our gratitude for all the joy she's brought to us, all of us, over the years.
I'll make sure that I do that when I see her next week.
Thank you, Jim. Now, speaking of Happy Days, you've appeared in 5 films directed by Ron Howard: The Paper, yes, Apollo 13, EdTV, The Grinch, and Frost Nixon. I know you first met Ron Howard on the set of Happy Days, but did you ever have an inkling back then that he would become such a renowned director?
Well, I mean, he really exceeded all expectations. Just to become a director or working director is one goal to be accomplished, which is pretty remarkable. But then to become one of the very, very top of all time, which he has really become, is something altogether. And I can't say that I had the prescience to really understand that and to really predict it. I just watched with my wife, we watched 13 Lives, his latest film, which is just a stunning culmination of all his many years of filmmaking. It is a brilliantly told tale that combines, an extremely exciting story with a message of, I got to say, it's a kind of a spiritual man over the elements message that is so well wrought and so amazingly performed. Anyway, I'm just blown away by what he has become and what he is. There anything Ron Howard cannot do? I really doubt it.
Well, there's a maturity about his body of work that just keeps expanding and is astounding, as you say. What was he like to work with?
Oh, well, he's the loveliest director to work with. I mean, because he's an actor himself, so he knows exactly what to tell you. He chooses people very carefully, down to, his crew that he works with and all the performers that work with him. He's very specific about what he's looking for. And so on the day, he just, he's a man of few words because he's already done the groundwork. He's a genius. One of his geniuses is at preparation. And so he lays the groundwork so that it's a very easy, effortless, and creative environment. So I look forward to someday working with him again. I would love to.
Jim, you first came to my attention in 1999 when you appeared in a terrific TV movie called Inherit the Wind with Jack Lemmon and George C. Scott. I think it was one of their last roles. You played a guy named Sauber. What was it like to work with those two great, giant actors?
It was a great pleasure. I mean, my father had worked with George C. Scott on stage in another courtroom drama called the Andersonville Trial in about 1958. So for me, it was very special to also work in a courtroom drama with the great George C. Scott. And I had met him before. I'd gone backstage on Broadway and met him a couple of times. But to actually be in a production with him was just, I was just so happy to be there and to share some stories with him and really see him as he was at that time. That was his last film. He was very ill, but was 100% professional, even though he was in quite a bit of pain, and did the hair would go up on my neck when he would do dramatic things in that movie. And Jack Lemmon as well, who I have enormous respect for, was great. He had a little more trouble remembering lines than George C. Scott did, but a charming and wonderful guy that used to always take lunch and meals with the crew and with the cast. Very down to earth guy. Yeah, it was a very pleasant experience. I met some wonderful, wonderful actors in that show.
Jim, you're one of the most versatile actors in Hollywood, and you're an amazing impressionist. We recently had Rich Little on our show, and he was telling me after we finished filming that you're really the only one who's following in his footsteps. Was he one of your idols when you were growing up?
Well, I'm shocked to hear that, but that's great news. Yes, he absolutely was. Well, I mean, he was the model. There was no one better than Rich Little when I was growing up. And he had a unique position, it seems to me, because when he came along in the late 50s, early 60s, he was a young man out of Canada, and he somehow had an entree into the Hollywood world of celebrities and big stars very early on, so that he had like face-to-face contact with them. He was on the Judy Garland show, and his nightclub act. I don't know the full history of it, but I've seen him, and you can see him on YouTube today, interacting with the actual Orson Welles, with Jimmy Stewart on stage, with Henry Fonda, which gives you a tremendous advantage as an impressionist, because you can really get a very deep and very rich characterization of the person if you're not just watching it off of the TV screen or the film screen. If you're there in person with them, you get the full impact of their personality and can base a really great impersonation off them. That and his own natural talent and interest level, because he obviously was very dedicated, I think created a unique set of opportunities for him, which he absolutely followed up on, and is well known to many people today, and he's sort of like the gold standard. So to hear that he made a nice statement about me is shocking, and again, I'm very suspicious.
He was very complimentary towards you. When I told him that you were coming on the show, he asked me to please send him the link to the interview because he's going to watch.
Wow. Well, Rich, I don't know what to say, man.
We love you, Rich.
We love you. We love you, and all the best to you.
Is it true, Jim, that Johnny Carson was one of the first voices that you mastered?
It was, and I got to say, Harvey, that Rich Little absolutely paved the way, because he showed that it could be done. And so that gave me some a little bit of courage, I guess.
I remember watching the Carson show. I was just a kid, and I used to watch with my father. It was a guilty pleasure on the weekends. My parents were divorced, and I would go to my father's house, and I could stay up as late as I wanted, drink as many sodas as I wanted, and I remember watching Carson with him late at night, on a Friday night, say, and just feeling like, wow, this is the grown-up world, isn't it hip and cool and kind of wicked? But there was a little line, just 3 words that Carson used to do to introduce, his writers must have thought of this, to introduce a certain kind of joke. And the 3 words were, it finally happened. Which almost sounds like 4 words, because he goes, it finally happened. And then he would describe some ludicrous event that, of course, probably could never have happened. But in my mind, I could sort of associate and made a link between that concept and those words and what my voice would have to do to go, it finally happened. And that was a breakthrough for me. It was like, I cracked what that feels like, what I have to feel like to sound like the great Johnny Carson.
And boy, do you ever, I'm telling you, you nailed it. I was checking you out on IMDb, which I know isn't always accurate, but I saw that you're going to be in a film about Gore Vidal where you play Johnny Carson. Is that right?
I was flown to Rome to portray Johnny Carson in Burbank a few years ago for a movie that unfortunately will probably never air, never be seen. It will never be finished unless something dramatic changes, because unfortunately it was Kevin Spacey's last big feature before the debacle of his career. And I think the subject matter and other factors will contribute to it not seeing the light of day. But I had a wonderful time in Rome.
And I got to play Johnny Carson on a set that looked all the world like the Burbank Tonight Show set, but it just happened to be in Rome. So I had a great time walking around, looking at all the ruins, not realizing that I was in the middle of a ruin.
Well, if they ever do a biopic of Johnny Carson, my vote is that you star in it.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, the older I get, the easier it gets to do. So
now you have a fabulous live show called Impressionist, which I had the pleasure of seeing in Toronto a number of years ago. Do you have any plans to go on tour again in the foreseeable future, or are you just too busy filming?
I am very busy filming. I'm in Brooklyn right now shooting an episode of FBI Most Wanted, and then I've got another couple of TV assignments ahead of me. But I'm updating, and I'm doing a bit of writing because my last time I did Impressions was before the pandemic, and that is a world away from where we are now. So I am rewriting the show, but I do hope to tour with it and at least perform it in Los Angeles, where I live. And I'll take it I'd love to go back to Australia. I'd love to go back to Canada, and to England would be wonderful to go back to these places where I have performed.
Well, we love you here. I can't wait. Now, in 2013, I was also thrilled to see you were a finalist on season 8 of America's Got Talent. If you had won, you would have headlined your own show in Vegas. Is that something you've ever wanted to do, Jim?
Not particularly. That wasn't the reason I did the show. I wasn't terribly interested in that. I'm actually not a big fan of Vegas. This is where Rich Little and I kind of part ways, is that that was not my goal. I do like to tour, and I like to go to different places and perform, of course, for live audiences, but to be ensconced in a room and have that be the thing, it just doesn't float my boat. I don't know what to tell you, but I did that show because I wanted to perform at Radio City Music Hall, which I got a chance to do.
With a standing ovation.
Thank you very much. Yes. And my mother was there, and 6,000 people fit in that hall. And it was a big challenge to do 90 seconds or less of impromptu impressions for that very interesting show.
Oh, you were amazing. Your impression of George W. Bush is so incredibly accurate. I'm sure you could fool anybody. Have you ever done your impression in front of him?
Well, I'll tell you what, I did the closest I've come was there was a Jib Jab film that debuted at White House Press Corps dinner in Washington, out there in Washington, D.C., and George W. Bush was there. And so he saw a video of what I'd done. And that was as close as I come. I think if I'd come face to face, mano a mano, I probably wouldn't have done it because, he's seen a lot of pretty good imitators. And he could have me thrown in that Gitmo.
Well, I don't think anybody does them as good as you do. I love the fact that you do voices that no one else does. You can do people like Robin Williams, Morgan Freeman, George Clooney, Ricky Gervais, and I've never heard anyone else do those voices. Is there anyone whose voice you haven't been able to perfect?
Well, we got 8 billion people on this planet. I would say the majority of them are people that I can't imitate. I like to I concentrate on the ones that I really love. You mentioned a bunch of performers there that I just have tremendous respect for. I love to watch George Clooney. I like to watch him. I think he's a great guy. I've had the opportunity to meet him. I did not do my impression of George in front of him. I didn't want to put him off. Ricky Gervais, also love Ricky Gervais. It's terrific. I mean, a lot of people find him off-putting. I don't. I mean, he makes me uncomfortable, but in a good way. Yeah. And who else did you mention?
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman, of course. We all love Morgan Freeman because he's the voice of so much that has to do with honor and veracity and penguins.
Okay, now I've got to mention Robin Williams. You did everybody else.
Yes, Robin Williams, thank you for reminding me. I didn't see it's hard to see the cue cards from here. Yeah. Robin Williams, everybody has such a soft spot in their heart for Robin Williams. And every time I do his voice for Disney or in my show, there's a moment of, I think audiences respond to it in a different sort of way. Because
we miss him.
Tenderness there. Yeah, there's a real tenderness because he represented, he coincided with a lot of people's childhood or their youth in a certain way. And he represented, I think, magic, creativity, imagination, all these things that are very personal and very revered by people. So to do Robin Williams' voice, for a while, I didn't want to do it after he passed because there was something very sort of touching about it. And it sort of represented something that I don't think in his lifetime he really represented, which was this kind of spiritual failure in a way. But then lately, I think we just remember the high points. We just remember the great moments, the funny things, the crazy, the off-the-wall things that he would say and do, that wonderful kind of expression and kind of ingenuity. And that's what we remember. And that's the great legacy of Robin Williams.
Well, I love that you're honoring that legacy and you do it so well. You had your own TV show called Impress Me with Ross Markwand, and a lot of really good impressionists were on it. I just loved it. I was very surprised when the show just, I don't know, it kind of disappeared. What happened?
Well, TV is a funny game. And it was a very inexpensive show to produce. Rainn Wilson's company paid for it. And it was briefly on a cable channel in the States called Pop TV. I don't know if it was the same in Canada. And then it was on Amazon Prime, and now I think it's stuck in litigation or something because it's owned by companies that are absorbing one another. I'm not sure what's going on with it exactly, but if you don't promote a show tremendously and spend money marketing a show and get press and public relations going, it doesn't really have much of a chance to find its audience. And by audience, you need tens of millions of people to get behind it. So that's really, I think, what happens to shows that you love and that are great quality shows, and there are plenty of them. But if they aren't promoted properly or enough people are made aware of them, then it's a kind of a niche thing. And people like yourself and other people that I know go, "Oh my God, I love this show. It was so great." And well, it was just too few of us out there that really, really dug it.
Well, I want you to know that I loved it, and I hope that in some way that show comes back because there's nothing else like it on TV. Now, of course, I have to ask you about Gaslit, which is a powerful miniseries about Watergate starring Julia Roberts as Martha Mitchell and Sean Penn as John Mitchell. It airs on the Starz network. You play Senator Edward Gurney. There isn't a lot of video footage of him. So how did you go about preparing for the role?
No, there isn't, and I was shocked by that. And I grew up in the Watergate era, and his was not a name that I was really familiar with. There are so many other colorful characters that emerged out of that, and names that just racket down the years. And we, that one just remembers. But he was a kind of a mystery to me. So I did the research that I could do. I found out where he was from. I saw the little tiny bits of video that exist about him, and then I just had to kind of extrapolate, and create basically a character that I could identify with as that guy, and that fulfilled the point of that character in our drama. And luckily, it was very well written, and even more luckily, it was very well directed by a guy named Matt Ross, who I admire very much, who is himself an actor like Ron Howard and a very good director. So when he put Sean Penn and I together, we rehearsed it a little bit, and then he said, you guys just bring it to life, and he encouraged us to play and to just kind of explore the moments. And I had a great time working with Sean. I was lucky too, because he had so much makeup on. Yeah. The makeup was designed by a very brilliant makeup artist named Kazuhiro, who I met 25 years ago on The Grinch when he was just starting his career. And absolute genius. And it covered him so completely and disguised him so completely, which was great for the show. It was also great for me, because I think ordinarily I would have been kind of starstruck by working with someone like Sean Penn, if he'd looked like Sean Penn. But to me, he looked like William Frawley. I felt like I was doing, another I Love Lucy biopic.
Now that you mention it, he did look like Fred Mertz.
He did. And so I was very comfortable working with him, because I had none of the kind of the residual effects of being kind of gobsmacked by working with a big star.
Yeah, but as a young man, you worked with the likes of George C. Scott and Jack Lemmon. So yeah, I don't think you would have been starstruck. I think that's one of the benefits of growing up in a household where your own mom was a Hollywood star.
I guess so. But, you get a little, I've worked with Travolta. I've worked with Tom Hanks, and I've worked with, I was even in a movie that Tom Cruise was in, Magnolia, and I met him on the set. I didn't work with him, but I was there when he was working, and I was doing my scene in an adjacent room. And, it's like, it's kind of nervy, even if you're in the business, because you just don't meet these people every day. And the thing I realize about big celebrities is, particularly like people like John Travolta that I grew up watching on various platforms, is that when you meet him, he's already given you so much. You've absorbed so many performances, so many great moments. He's affected your life in so many ways that your natural inclination, you feel, is to try to return some of what he's given you, which is absolutely impossible to do in like a 2-minute period. And so the vibration that starts as you try to return the flow of all the things that he's given you is just, people just shake. They just shake around celebrities. It's because this flow is just interrupted, and you're trying to go the other way with it. And unless you can spend a little bit of time, and after a while, 2 or 3 times of being with them, and you're like, okay, I think we've evened out that flow now. I think I've been able to return to you at least some acknowledgement, some thank yous, so that we're at a little bit of a parity.
Well, that's a very interesting way to put it. I know that many stars have told me that the bigger the talent that they work with, the bigger the star, the nicer they are.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Yeah, there's some very, very nice. I've met very few stinkers. I worked with Martin Landau. He was very charming. I thought he would be very closed off, but he wasn't at all. And Matthew McConaughey, and just some terrific folks. I can't think of any that I didn't enjoy spending time with.
So that in a few years, people like me are going to be pestering you to write a memoir, because you've got all these stories that we want to preserve as well. So just please keep that in mind.
That's very flattering. Thank you.
Now, in Apollo 13, I believe you portrayed a real person who worked in mission control. Was Gaslit the only other time that you played a real person on screen?
That's a good question. I think I've portrayed people that existed. Well, in Frost Nixon, I played a guy who had existed before, who had been part of the Nixon team. I cannot remember the man's name, but he was part of the Nixon cabinet. And in other things, I have played people. Well, I've played a lot of, you mentioned Johnny Carson. I played Johnny Carson. I just recently played Phil Donahue for a movie about Chippendales. The
Yes,
origin.
I'm going to ask you about that.
Well, that's one we might as well tell you. The cat's out of the bag now. I did that. That will be on TV.
Jim, during the pandemic, when we were all in lockdown, you got together with Barry Bostwick, Renee Taylor, John Schneider, and a number of other stars, and you created an online comedy series called Viral Vignettes, which became a huge success. It was a fundraiser for the Actors Fund. What gave you the idea to do that?
Well, I must say, I did not found it. I did not start it. That was a man named David Levin, who was a producer and a writer and a good friend of mine from back in New York. And he had the idea actually in lockdown because he'd been doing a lot of online interviews and things. And he came up with this idea of getting some writers that he knew from the golden age of television or one of the golden ages, I guess the 80s and 90s, to create short plays that could be done over Zoom. And he enlisted a lot of the stars that you mentioned and many more. Max Gale was another one. And just dozens of people. Renee Taylor, like you said, and myself. And Anson Williams directed me and Susan Rutten in a little play about a guy who was kind of a hoarder that was being called by a census taker. And he was very reluctant to answer any questions. And that was a lot of fun to do. And we shot that in our respective homes. I was supposed to be this, as I say, this kind of hoarder guy, this kind of, I don't know, what's another word for them? A conspiracy theorist or whatever. And so he was kind of holed up somewhere. And so I used my mother's garage, which is getting to be quite full of stuff, as the background. And we recorded it on Zoom, and it's done quite well in the festivals, actually, all the little vignettes. And it was fun, and it raised some money and awareness for the Actors Fund. And creatively, at a time when there wasn't any TV or filming going on to speak of, it was just nice to be directed, to be filmed, and to get some entertainment out there.
Oh, it was wonderful. A lot of people may not be aware that on top of everything else you do, you're a professional artist and a cartoonist. In fact, you started out as a visual artist working in animation, and you created dozens of characters for the original Thundercats animated series. What made you switch from being an artist to being a performer?
Well, I drew and painted all my young life, and I even went down a very serious path to become a classical style, realist painter. I lived in Spain for a couple of years and studied it. And, in my early 20s, I was really kind of wrestling with the conundrum of like, what about this? What choice should I honor? Should I be because I felt like I like to be a performer. I liked acting. And I also like painting. And I felt like, well, you have to do one or the other. You have to make a choice. It has to be the right choice, and all these things that young people get obsessed with. And I determined finally that I needed a more social art form than painting. I'd been very lonely as a painter, especially in Spain, in the little countryside where we'd been. And I'd spent so much time there. And it was very beautiful and very aesthetic. And I learned so much. But in the end of the day, I was just kind of lonely because I'm a much more social person. So I decided to move to New York and become an actor. So that was when I was 23, and I'm glad. I look back on it now and I realize that was the right choice for me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're such a social person. Now, a little while ago, you decided to start an online course on how to become a working actor. It's called the Working Actor Method. And the course can be found at www.jimworkingactor.com. I can't think of anyone more qualified, not only because of your extensive work experience, but because you grew up seeing firsthand what it took to be a working actor, didn't you?
I did. And that was the basis for why I felt confident in sharing some of these lessons. I should point out that even though it's called the Working Actor Method, that wasn't a name I came up with. That the marketing company came up with that. I don't really like the word method thrown in there because it seems to infer another kind of method, which is one that I do not use. But it is my successful actions in creating a career and keeping it rolling, keeping it developing, so that and it is the main things that I've done over 35 years to continue to work in film and television and stage and voiceover and animation and all the different things that I do. So I've made a series of videos, and they're very nicely produced, and they contain really, I'm not holding anything back. I, as I say in the course, I paid attention over the last 35 years. I know what I did. I did it on purpose. And although I did make, mistakes and missteps, even those I talk about, and so that people that are interested in keeping a career going or starting a career will have the advantage of, what I went through without perhaps having to make those mistakes, and to take those key points and keep moving with a career. Because that's the toughest thing about acting, is that, like now I'm working on a show this week. On Wednesday, I'll be unemployed. So I have to, of course, there's going to be many Wednesdays that I'm going to have in my future. How do I keep it rolling so that I have more work? I keep pushing forward, keep getting better opportunities, and really building something over the long haul.
So if you could have taken your course back when you started as an actor, would you have done things differently?
That's a very interesting question. I think I would have been freaked out looking at myself in the future going, wow, do you mean I'm going to lose all my hair?
Join the club, Jim.
Yeah, I know. I think I've seen you at the meetings. The thing about youth is you do what you think is right, and you have tremendous confidence. And luckily, I think I made more right choices than ill. And that's why I've survived long enough to make a video course in how to keep a career going. So I think I would have probably been very happy to follow my own advice, because it's what I was already naturally kind of moving towards.
I love the fact that you've made this course available online, because this accessibility for young people starting out who don't have the money to go to New York and learn the method, they can buy this course and get really practical information from a working actor who gives them tips that maybe you wouldn't even get in a school.
I think that's true. Also, I should say that I don't teach acting per se in the course. So you should know about that. It's just about managing the career, where I'm assuming that you're already either an actor or studying acting. And my wife has a very good acting school called the Acting Center in Los Angeles. And that's also, they've been doing online courses all during the lockdown. And they've continued even now, because they've got now students in South Africa and Australia and all over the world that tune in online and do courses there. That is the place I recommend to go for actual acting training. My course has to do with keeping the career going, developing the career, and managing it all so that your momentum doesn't fizzle out.
Well, that's a huge part of being a success, that's for sure. Jim, it's very evident that your creativity is the way that you keep reinventing yourself and finding direction and purpose in your life. And you've made yourself available from time to time as a motivational speaker to inspire people to connect with their own creativity, to establish a more positive outlook on life. Where does your desire to educate and inspire people come from?
Well, I like to help people. I've been helped tremendously. When I look back at the individuals that have, given me guidance and help, I'm just so grateful for it. It means so much when you think about how, a few simple words from someone that you really trust, who's really, caring and smart and empathetic, can just save you years of floundering. I mean, I was very fortunate, as you mentioned, to have my mom, Marion Ross, who was a very positive person, Minnesota girl with a big dream of becoming a star, who became this iconic, incredible character. Various teachers I've had, and other leaders that I've been able to interface with, just great artists that have inspired me. They mean a lot to me. So all that to say that I like to help. I appreciate the fact that human beings can help each other a lot, and really that's one of our purposes as human beings. I think that we don't live on this planet all by ourselves. We have to have tremendous amounts of cooperation. I was just walking around New York City yesterday, which I haven't been in the city since before the pandemic. And I was just noticing how many people there are moving busily about and how much help there is going on all the time, from the tour bus guys to the cops in the street to the people opening doors, the doormen, to the shoppers who are helping the businesses. Everybody is interacting in a way that is orderly, or tries to be orderly as far as they can see. So I think it's just a very human trait that we're trying to, we're not trying to knock the legs out from one another. We're trying to actually help each other along.
I think it's really lovely, and it's great karma too. Now, you're part of a new comedy series on Apple TV called The Big Door Prize, which is based on the book by the same name. It's about a machine that shows up in a small town and that can predict people's destinies. You're in 4 episodes, and you got to work with the wonderful Chris O'Dowd. That must have been so much fun.
Well, I tell you, I don't know if your viewers are familiar with Chris O'Dowd, but he's just a marvelous, fun, creative, and wonderful actor who I adore. And yeah, I got to work with him and some other talented people on that show. And it's from one of the creators of the Schitt's Creek show. So it's very funny, very, very different. And I had a great time working on it. And it's the only show that I've ever worked on where they said, not for nothing, but if you wanted to get a little physically fit, and work out with a trainer for this show, we'll help you pay for that. Well, all right.
So did you?
I did. I've been training ever since they brought it up. So, and I have a wonderful trainer in LA named Eric the Trainer, and I've been having a great time. So I'm very grateful for that. Even if hopefully the show will do well and people will love it, but in any case, I'm going to keep working out.
Well, the book was a huge success. I can't imagine that people won't love the show. The story is so unusual. I can't wait to see it.
Likewise. I enjoyed the 4 episodes I was in, and I look forward to season 2.
Now, you mentioned that you're going to be playing Phil Donahue in a new show about the Chippendales. Are you able to tell us anything at all about it?
I don't think so. I think I've already said too much.
Oh, all right.
It's called Welcome to Chippendales, and it's a Disney production somewhere.
Well, it's just that when they told you to get physically buff, I was wondering maybe there's something in the Chippendales for you too.
Well, actually, I had to wear a little bit of a fat suit for that one because, Phil was a little better eater than I was.
Well, I want to tell our viewers that you can find out more about Jim Meskimen, including his live shows and personal appearances, by going to his website, jimmeskimen.com. And the website for his course on how to become a working actor is jimworkingactor.com. And don't forget to subscribe to his extremely popular YouTube channel, which is called Impressionist. It's loaded with dozens of hilarious performances. It's a regular in my house. Well, Jim, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you about your amazing, multifaceted career. I wish you the best of luck with all your projects, and I want you to know you're always welcome here anytime. Thank you so much for taking the time to appear on our show.
Well, thank you for such a gracious interview. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Our guest has been the amazing Jim Meskimen. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver, and to our team in LA and the UK. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.